Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and with all the hype about the, I guess, data mined mage, warrior, DK legendaries and things floating around right now, I wanted to take a little bit of time today to talk about, I guess, review and discuss legendaries that I think might be possibly returning, I guess maybe their effects, at least for warlocks, in Shadowlands. Now, I thought the best place to start would actually be just reviewing the legendaries that we had in Legion. Now, there very well might be some talents and things that could very well be baked into a legendary effect returning as well. But I said, hey, let's start in Legion, seeing as how a good portion of the actual data mined abilities are actually Legion legendaries returning. So let's get right into this. Now, I did sort of want to talk a tiny bit, about the generic legendaries here. There are, Amanthul's obviously is from Argus, which had a very low drop rate on it. This is like the legendary from the quest line, I think, in Argus. And Burning Wish was a generic legendary DPS for all DPS specs, trinket-wise. They haven't really said if there's going to be any generic kind of legendary effects in Shadowlands. If I have a feeling there probably will be, I'd imagine. I think for the most part, like Prydaz, Cephus was a massive hit once it actually got the the haste, the bloodlust effect kind of on it. And Prydaz was a pretty decent hit as well in certain spots for progression and things. But honestly, one of the biggest things about Prydaz 2 was just the actual socket and the secondary stats that it brought. So, I mean, if there is a Cephus kind of effect that returns, that'd be pretty legit. But at the same time, hey, Demonology still doesn't have an interrupt. What? Okay, realistically, I want to talk mostly just about the actual Warlock, it's like class spec-based ones for Affliction, Demonology, and Destruction. So, basically, we did have a few that were sort of like generic that worked for all specs. Pillars of the Dark Portal cause your demonic gateway to be instant cast, and you can use it twice before triggering the 2-minute CD on it. It's a utility legendary. It's important to keep in mind here that we're really only looking at the actual effects here, like I mentioned. When it comes to Prydaz, like I mentioned before, the socket and the secondary stats are pretty good on it. The shield was relevant, but a lot of the times it was just worn due to the raw stats that it has. So the effect on Pillars, it's utility. I like it. I think it's relevant. But I'll be real with you. Legendary effects, I want to be damage amps, damage increases, things that work with certain abilities for each spec and just further amplify what you do in certain settings. Pillars, it's a cool effect, but I'm not super hyped about it overall. Soul of the Netherlord, however, though, both Soul and Master Harvester were introduced in the Broken Shore patch, I believe, of Legion. Soul of the Netherlord is pretty interesting. Now, there were some actual abilities which we believe are Torghast-based abilities now. However, we're not totally sure. You are able to select different talents in Torghast depending on certain animal powers. However, Soul of the Netherlord gave you the option of essentially putting it on, and it would give you an extra talent in a certain row for Affliction, Demonology, and Destruction. As you can see here, Af and Demo got Soul Conduit. Deshro got Eradication. This was different before. I know for a fact. Affliction got Death's Embrace, which was the Execute talent, which was amazing. I would love to have that back. I don't remember exactly what Demonology got. I'm pretty sure Destro had Eradication. Like, I think that one's still correct here. But for the most part, I think a legendary like this would be pretty cool. It would also sort of solve that universal legendary effect being relevant, not just for one spec in a sense. And if the actual talents that you got were relevant, it would be pretty impactful across the board. It is also important to note here that we'll scroll through these a bit more. The tooltips here, actually, yeah, there we go. We can see Demonology got Grimoire of Synergy. Man, Affliction had Death's Embrace, but that's gone. The actual effect here has not been updated. However, the tooltip has. The tooltip is basically just whatever it changed to, either in pre-patch or whenever a talent was removed, which sort of works in like time walking, things like that. But it does hold some relevance potentially heading into Shadowlands. So I think the effect on Soul from Netherlord would be really cool. The Master Harvester is a bit of an odd one. Each soul shard you spend has a 3% chance, a 369, I guess, depending on the spec, to grant you Soul Harvest for 8 seconds. Now, Soul Harvest was sort of our Dark Soul cooldown in a sense now. It was a raw damage increase. And the closest thing we have to it now is Dark Soul. Instability, DSI, DSM, regardless. The Master Harvester came out later on, and it was used at times. The legendary eye level and secondary stats were impactful. This chest, the thing with this chest is, though, this effect more so, it's RNG. it's not guaranteed to give you a proc for 8 seconds whenever you spend 3, 6, 9% or whatever resource you need to spend here. It's RNG. And a lot of these effects, like, they might be inherently really powerful. You might be able to, in a sense, chain Soul Harvest for upwards of a minute. Very, very similar to Rolling Havoc with Ineffable Truth. And then at times, you don't get any procs at all. Similar to how Random Chaos is for Destro on Alpha, or other RNG-based effects like VOP currently on live with Supremacy and things. So this effect is cool. I think it does sort of fit the Destro chaotic kind of playstyle they're going for. And it also is like a generic, technically like a generic effect across all 3 specs, because all 3 specs do use soul shards, but I'm not a huge fan of the RNG this brings. Sacrilash's Dark Strike. Now, I think pretty much everybody knows what this is. If I say the name to you, I doubt half the active Warlocks in the game remember exactly what this item is. But when you say it's Corruption Ring, oh, done. Corruption deals 15% increased damage, so basically like Absolute Corruption damage amp as well. But it also slows enemy movement by 60%, and this is permanent. This was one item in Legion that gave, outside of Af's toolkit being pretty broken, gave Affliction Warlocks a lot of value and a lot of utility in Mythic Plus. This made kiting on bolstering weeks, kiting in general, so much easier. It made your tank's life so much easier. Applying Corruption, whether you're playing AC or Writhe or whatever talent in that row, and just slowing the mobs. It made life so much easier. It enabled so many different strategies, and honestly, like, being real, I think this is probably one of the legendary effects that I feel probably has the highest chance of returning. It's more or less just, you know, I guess opinion-based, but this is like, if you think of Warlock Legendaries, you know, from Legion, this is one of those that's up there. I would love to see this effect return. Obviously, it would depend a bit on if AF is good in Mythic Plus. I think his toolkit is still in a good spot, even after the Unstable Affliction changes. But regardless, Sacrilash's Dark Strike is pretty high up my list of actual legendary effects I'd like to see return. Now, there is one thing that I wanted to point out here with Sacrilash's Dark Strike that I sort of forgot to mention. Demonology, Destruction, and Affliction all have Corruption now. Affliction can apply it with Seed and play Absolute Corruption and apply it instantly. Destro and Demo have to cast it with a 2-second cast time, but technically all 3 specs do have Corruption. So technically all 3 specs could have access to a Corruption slow kind of legendary. Now, like I said, AF is able to slow multiple mobs, packs much easier, faster than other specs, but depending on the setting, I mean, if this effect came back in Mythic Plus, it would be extremely relevant. There would be times there probably would be times if Destro or Demo were good in Mythic Plus and AF isn't, that people might be wearing its ring, honestly, just for the utility it brings. It is so incredibly strong. Power Chord of Lethandrus. Casting Unstable Affliction on a target who is not already affected by UA has a 25% chance to refund a Soul Shard, or the Soul Shard cost. This is essentially a nightmare. Unstable Affliction is limited to 1 on Alpha right now. The change that made it, they reverted it back to the way it was in this current build that came out 2 days ago. UA does also not cost a Soul Shard, so it won't be refunding a shard. And you really can't, it's a mess. I think you're much more likely to see some kind of cascading calamity effect. Maybe like if you refresh your UA within the last 2 seconds of your active one being like falling, you get a haste buff, something along those lines. UA already gives us a shard whenever the target dies with UA active on it. It doesn't cost a shard anymore, and it just, we're not going to see any kind of power chord of Lethandrus ability returning, which honestly I'm fine with. Stren's Sleepless Shackles. Now, each enemy afflicted by your Unstable Affliction increases all the damage you deal by 4. Well, now, that's also an irrelevant legendary effect because of the changes to UA. So, there you go. Moving right on. In case you don't know, in case you missed my last 2 videos, UA is limited to 1 target now. It doesn't matter how many targets you have. If you're fighting 18 targets at once, you can have 1 Unstable Affliction rolling on 1 target. This was a change that was reverted 2 days ago in this most recent alpha build, and here we are, basically invalidating these 2 legendaries. But let's be real here, it's not required to keep these viable anymore. It's fine. Hood of Eternal Disdain. I remember exactly where I got Hood of Eternal Disdain from. I got this from LFR Odin. I did LFR, normal, heroic, and mythic pugs, or mythic raid, depending on if it was the current tier or not with my guild, every single week in Legion until I got every single legendary. Agony deals its full damage 10% faster. Hood of Eternal Disdain is strong. It's very similar to what Creeping Death is now, just for all your dots. It's a strong effect. There's not much else to say about it. This in conjunction with like Wrath and Agony, Sudden Onset, I'm talking I guess technically BFA things here, but Wrath and Agony, it was powerful. It was a powerful effect. So I'd like to see it return, I suppose. Maybe in some form where it just amplifies Agony's damage a bit more. But with Creeping Death in game, I don't know how, I say relevant, but how likely it is for this kind of ability to return. It's sort of just already there, even though we don't really play Creeping Death right now. It's sort of there already. So, and the final AF legendary we have here is Reap and Sow. Reap Souls last 1.5 seconds longer per soul consumed. Well, guess what? Reap Souls is gone. Hasn't been around for 3 years now. So, honestly, out of the AF legendaries here, Sacrilege Dark Strike, like seriously, I think is #1 on my list here. I'd love to see Sacrilege back. I think if they just made Agony deal damage 10% faster, with Hood, they could bring Hood back too. Basically irrelevant, and irrelevant. But I mean, like, honestly, Sacrilege is up there, man. Sacrilege is like, that ability was awesome. It was fun. I enjoy playing with it. It was fun. I actually enjoyed playing with it. It was good. And this effect would be extremely relevant when it comes to our utility in Mythic Plus. Yes, technically AF does have Vile Taint, which can slow mobs. It's not a perma-slow. With Corruption, it's a perma-slow. And hey, I mean, this effect with AC means that Corruption is doing a lot more damage. 15 and 15, it's pretty good. Moving on to the Demonology legendaries here. Kazac's Final Curse. Doom deals 5% increased damage for each demon pet you have active. Well, Doom is a talent, so that's probably off the list. Okay, being real, like, Doom is a talent. I don't think they tie a legendary into requiring you to have one specific talent for Demonology. There's probably certain ways they could tune this, but it's important to keep in mind that when this legendary was actually out, Doom was an ability that Demo had baseline. And we also had Hand of Doom, which applied Doom to whatever mob Hand of Gul'dan hit. So I don't think this ability is super relevant when it comes to potential legendary returning abilities. However, the next few below this one, I'd love to see back. Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning. I cannot tell you how many times this gets mentioned on stream. Each Dreadstalker, Dark Glare, or Wild Imp you summon reduces the remaining cooldown on Summon Infernal, whatever. This is the old tooltip here. This is the current one. Each Dreadstalker, or Wild Imp you summon reduces the remaining cooldown on Summon Demonic Tyrant by 2 seconds. Now, obviously, this effect would be extremely powerful with Demonic Consumption. Extremely powerful, especially with the changes to Demonic Consumption that were made a few days ago. It'd be strong regardless, right? I think Demonology is going back to a 1.5-minute Tyrant. We don't have Vision of Perfection around anymore. So, honestly, like, I would like to see Wilfred's back. I think it sort of depends on how the tuning on it is, I suppose. But Wilfred's with Demonic Consumption is a very strong interaction. Even just without it, having your Demonic Tyrant be a minute CD, like it is on live now, instead of a 1.5-minute or whatever it's going to be in Shadowlands, is really impactful. I think as far as like raw DPS goes, out of all the legendaries we looked at, Wilfred's would be the biggest, the biggest raw damage increase here, hands down. Plus, I mean, let's be real here. You know, it makes the spec a lot more fun to play. And as far as micromanaging goes, it makes it a lot more interesting too. It's just fun. It's a fun legendary. It was one of the ones I loved playing with the most in Legion. The one below it, however, is also pretty solid. And there's a subtle little interaction here that is new. Recurrent Ritual. Called Dreadstalkers. Refunds 1 soul shard. Well, I think this was 2 in Legion, actually, right? Didn't it just refund 2 shards? I don't remember. I think so. I should know this. Called Dreadstalkers refunds 1 soul shard, right? Demonic Calling was just changed. I think 2 days ago. Yeah. Shadowbolt and Demon Bolt have a 20% chance to make your next Called Dreadstalkers cost 2 less soul shards and have no cast time. So essentially, if they brought back some kind of recurrent ritual effect here, and you had Demonic Calling, Called Dreadstalkers becomes a soul shard generator if you have a Demonic Calling proc. And let's be real here, like, you have a Demonic Calling proc a pretty good bit of the time as Demonology. With the 20-second CD they have, that you have on casting Call of Dreadstalkers, I'd say a pretty good portion of the time you have a Demonic Calling proc waiting for you. This is even more relevant because Dreadstalkers, if they were refunding you a Soul Shard, generating you a Soul Shard, this is even more relevant when it comes to like maximizing the overall amount of pets you have out before casting your Tyrant if you're playing the new Demonic Consumption. Because the new Demonic Consumption siphons 15% of each of your active pet's life and sort of puts that into like your Tyrant's overall power. It doesn't kill your imps anymore. So you want your dogs in there, your Dreadstalkers. You want your imps in there. You want your baseline Felguard. You want your Vilefiend if you're playing it. You want your Grimoire Felguard if you're playing it. And every shard matters there because you're trying to squeeze in every single pet, imp, whatever you want possible. So honestly, like, out of these two effects, I'm really split on which one I like more. I mean, Wilfred's probably wins out in the long run. It's really cool. Having a Tyrant on a shorter CD gives you a very unique damage profile in Mythic Plus and things. But at the same time, having Call of Dreadstalkers be a Soul Shard generator, or even just like costing one shard in general, if you don't have a proc, is good. It's good. So I think both these have a decent chance of returning. I think the overall recurrent ritual effect is probably a little bit more likely, because I sort of feel like with Wilfred's and tuning and higher haste levels, this could become sort of a tuning nightmare. They could easily just change it from 2 seconds to 1.5 or whatever later on, but this could be a bit of a headache to tune. So I feel like out of these two, recurrent's more likely to return. I think both are on the table, probably. So Sindora Spite is another one that was technically a Demonology legendary. However, this worked for every spec. For 25 seconds after casting your summon Doomguard or summon Infernal, which you could have permanently due to Grimoire of Synergy, I think, in Legion. I can't remember the exact name. You and your minions deal 15% increased damage. So this is sort of odd, right? The updated tooltip here is for 25 seconds after casting Summon Doomguard, Infernal, or Demonic Tyrant, you and your minions deal 15% increased damage. So I mean, honestly, like, this is... You don't get a raw damage amp when you summon your Tyrant, but your pets do. So it's sort of like you already have this effect, in a sense, for Demo. Seeing as how a lot of your damage is based in your pets, around your pets, it's something. This would be pretty big for Destro, or if they work this in for, obviously, Darkglare. This would be pretty big. I don't know how likely we are to see this effect return. I don't think it's something outside the realm of possibility. There's, like I said, there's that weird interaction with your Tyrant, and Consumption, already buffing your pets by 15%. But I don't think this is outside the realm of possibility. It would need a bit of tweaking and tuning, but Sindora Spite was a legendary that people liked a lot, that loved, honestly. Even once we got past the actual pre-pull timer gear swapping from Sindora Spite summoning your Doomguard into a different legendary set for the permanent the damage amp, Sindora Spite was still fun to play with. And you saw it used on a handful of fights, depending on kill times, things like that. It really allowed you to optimize a little bit more. I would like to see this effect return too. I think it was fun, active, engaging. I remember exactly where I got Sindora Spite to. At the end of, I think, +7 Neltharion's Lair, like week 3. I got lucky. Wakener's Loyalty is the last Demonology effect here. Each soul shard you spend empowers Skull of the Minari, increasing the damage of your next Thalchaos consumption by 3%. Now, okay, so obviously Skull of Minari is not around. Thalchaos consumption is not around. The equip here, the current updated tooltip, is a flat 3% damage increase, because they don't really have a way to spend this. However, in the most recent blue post they put out, they mentioned that the new Demonic Consumption, they want to be sort of a hybrid between, like, what Demonic Consumption is now and what Thalchaos Consumption was before. And they mentioned Thalchaos Consumption. You could probably find some way to spin Wakener's Loyalty into, like, each soul shard you spend empowers your next Demonic Consumption by a certain amount. I think that's actually a pretty solid legendary effect, and I just thought of it right now. It makes sense. Honestly, if they want to go back to having that Thalchaos Consumption kind of feel for Demonic Consumption, which makes sense. I mean, you're supposed to be like some kind of, I don't know, demon summoning overlord. You should be able to siphon life from your pets and deal more damage to your target from that. It makes sense. I would like to see this legendary effect return. So I mean, out of Demonology, like Loyalty, Sindora Spite, Recurrent, and Wilfred's are all like relevant abilities I could see coming back. It's probably most likely we get Recurrent Ritual if we get anything here. I think Recurrent was overall like probably it's sort of like the most iconic, I guess, legendary as far as Legion Demo went. You can make a case for Wilfred's too. It's definitely one of these two, but it's probably Recurrent Ritual followed by like maybe Wilfred's if they want to deal with the tuning on it, Wakeners, and then Sindora Spite. But I think all four of these are legitimately relevant and potentially a thing we could get back. So now as far as Destro goes here, Destro was in a similar form to what it was in Legion, but also a decent bit different. So I don't know how to say this name. Pyrogenics. This is a ring for Destro. Enemies affected by a rain of fire, which by the way was buffed by 30% 2 days ago, take 10% increased damage from your fire spells. So I don't know how much I like this effect. I think there were like some half meme builds going around in Legion towards the end with like rain of fire in single target builds and like a damage amp to all your fire spells. I don't remember exactly. I remember hearing like sort of a little bit amusing about it, but either way, I don't know how relevant. I don't think this ability would be very relevant, honestly. I'm sure it could be, depending on tuning. To me, personally, it just sounds sort of boring. I don't know. Yeah, it's cool, I guess. But, you know, I guess, like, enemies affected by your rain of fire take 10% increased damage from your rain of fire and other random spells that you're casting while your rain is active. It could be used as a damage amp, I guess, for rain of fire even more if it became that impactful in a rotation. I mean, technically we do have the build we played 2 days ago in the new dungeon, which we uploaded yesterday, where we played, you know, Soul Conduit with Rain of Chaos, which we were basically just spamming Rain of Fire when we had our Infernal down for all our shard gen coming in, trying to spawn more Infernals, because, hey, Rain takes 3 shards versus Chaos Bolt taking 2. And with how slow haste is on Alpha right now, or how like long cast times are, if Rain of Fire is relevant, it might be relevant damage-wise. Technically, there is the option to play Inferno to further increase your damage there. I just don't think it's super relevant. Shawl of whatever this thing is, Odor? Oh, Shawl of the Ymriar? I have no idea. Enemies marked by your Havoc take 15% increased damage from your single target spells. So, I mean, it's essentially a buff to the actual Havoc target. You'll be dealing normal damage to the target that does not have Havoc on it, but it's the ad that spawns that you want to put your Havoc on maybe, and then cleave back onto the boss. Maybe like Mythic. A million examples. The target that has your Havoc on it will be taking increased damage from your Havoc. Your, I guess, single target abilities. Basically your rotation. Okay. It's solid. It'd be a cool effect for Destro. I feel like looking at Demonology, even some AF legendaries, they're a lot more impactful, just looking at the overall general toolkit of the spec. But then again, I mean, Destro is the king of 2-target cleave, so we got to see where that goes. I think this is potentially like an ability you could see returning, but it's just sort of underwhelming to me, I suppose. Feretory of Souls. This was a spicy one. Casting a damaging fire spell has a 6% chance to generate a soul shard. I feel like the chance was higher in Legion, by the way. Like it was nerfed, maybe? I don't know. This is sort of like a Soul Conduit-esque ability here. Feretory was something people like playing with a lot. You know, the extra shard gen. It sort of plays into the chaotic kind of playstyle that they're, I guess, going for with Destro right now in game. I like it. I think this is a very real ability you could see returning for Destro. Realistically, it's good in single target. It's good on 2-target. It's good in AoE. It's good in cleave. It works off Rain of Fire. Off basically almost all your spells, right? Barring Chaos Bolt. Like, and technically, like, Chaos Bolt is chaos damage, but with how Roaring Blaze is working now, who knows if that's considered a fire spell at this point? Who knows? But yeah, like, I think Feretory could be a real relevant, you know, legitimate ability that we could see as far as like a Destro legendary effect goes here. Magic Strike Restraints. Chaos Bolt has a 20% chance to strike an additional enemy within 30 yards. It's cool. I like it. It very well could be. It fits the spec, the overall like, I guess, flavor they're going for with Destro. And I mean, yeah, it's relevant. I don't think there are many fights we played Magic Strike Restraints on. There were like 1 or 2, I think, maybe. It's been a while, maybe. But, I mean, it sort of gives you, like, the chance to Havoc a Chaos Bolt outside of your Havoc, I suppose. It's relevant. It seems sort of narrow. That's the word I'm looking for. Shawl and Restraints just seem sort of narrow. And to be fair, they were narrow in Legion. Feretory is not anywhere near as narrow. It just sort of depends on what the overall chance is to refund a shard and things, you know. And finally, we have Lessons of Space-Time. Now, listen, Lessons of Space-Time are awesome. I love them. When you have a Dimensional Rift open, all of your damage is increased by 10. Dimensional Rifts aren't around anymore, man. All we have is a flat 3% damage increase if you wear these on live right now. They probably could, maybe, I don't know, let's be honest here. They're probably not going to, even trying to put any kind of spin on these, when you have X active, your damage is increased by 10. Let's be real here. This is actually pretty similar to what Roaring Blaze is now. It's basically, when you have your conflag, when you conflag for 6 seconds, you deal 30% increased fire damage. Yeah. So, as far as Destro returning legendaries go, I think Feretory is a very solid option. Restraints, yeah. Shawl, sure. I guess. I just feel like 3 out of 4 of these are pretty narrow. It's Rain of Fire. It's enemies marked by your Havoc, which is fine, because when you play Destro, barring it being overtuned single target-wise, you're typically Havocing something. Narrow, and a bit narrow, you know? And thinking back, I mean, these weren't really played as far as Destro goes. You played, like, Feretory and Shoulders, or Feretory and Bracers, these things, or you played like a combination of two, like these three, maybe another legendary here and there, or like I think you play like Soul of Netherlord a bit, maybe. It's been a while, but regardless, for Destro, like most likely I feel like probably Feretory. It's pretty generic in a good way across the board, meaning it hits single target, it hits Havoc, it hits everything. It's relevant across the board pretty much, right? Yeah, that's that. As far as like having all 3 specs taken into consideration, what I want to see back the most, honestly, probably Wilfred's. Let's be real here. They could very easily just spin Wilfred's and they could very easily make Wilfred's work some way to reduce the cooldown on your Summon Infernal for Destro 2, and not even make it like a Demonology based one, you know? We have Dark Caller for Affliction, but they can make this work for, I guess, technically Destro, or even like, they can make this work a lot of ways, but let's be real. Wilfred's for Demonology made the spec a lot of fun. It already was fun, but I mean, it made it even more fun. Probably like Wilfred's, followed by, I would imagine, like Wilfred's, probably Recurrent Ritual. Listen, I enjoy playing Demo, but at the same time, like, these were just fun legendaries, and the Destro ones are sort of, like, generic, you know? But, like, I think, like, you're not going to see any kind of weird Power Chord-esque abilities coming back. You have a much higher chance of seeing Cascading Calamity as a whole. But TLDR, I mean, there are a handful of abilities here they could certainly very easily bring back. Soul of Netherlord, very likely, just giving you, and it's a great generic talent, or a great generic effect. 1 talent for each spec, you're good to go. It covers all 3 specs. Dang, there you go, you're done. Soul, Master Harvester, how many do we have here? Technically 1, 2, if this affected like Dark Soul. 1, 2, obviously Corruption Ring. I'd love to see this back too. This might very well beat out like Recurrent Ritual, having Dark Strike back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's like 9, 10 potential legendaries they can bring back. Legendary effects, I suppose, which I think would help Warlock feel much better. Yeah, let me know, guys. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. Some of these probably would take a little bit more work than others, like Wakener's Loyalty, to like get in game. But I definitely think even taking like the generic baseline core ability and putting a bit of a spin on it for maybe Demonic Consumption instead is not too hard to do. Like I said, let me know what you guys want to see in the comment section below. I probably missed some talents that very well could come back as legendaries as well. I'm going to be real with you. This is probably as close as we're going to get to Kill Jaden's Cunning. I don't think we're getting it back. I know everybody loves Soul Burn, Soul Swap, but I don't think it's coming back. But yeah, dudes, thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to smash the subscribe button below. Helps out a lot. And I will see you guys again soon. And hopefully, over the course of the next few days, we have maybe next build, we have some Warlock potential data mined legendary effects around. That'd be pretty sick. So, thanks again, dudes, and I will see you all again soon on stream. Peace.